Navy SEAL asked the nurse's rank as a joke. Then 4 generals saluted her immediately. "Come on, sweetheart, don't be shy." Lieutenant Commander Ethan Graves laughed, swirling his scotch. He leaned in close, his voice mocking enough to turn heads at the elite DC gala. "You're wearing a designer dress, but I know a support staff paycheck when I see one. What are you? An ensign? A Lieutenant JG? Tell me your rank, and I promise I won't make you salute me." Maya didn't flinch. Her eyes were cold steel. "Ethan, you really don't want the answer to that. Try me." Suddenly the double doors burst open. The music died instantly. General Vance, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, marched in, flanked by 3 4-star generals. They walked right past Ethan, ignoring him completely. They stopped directly in front of the nurse. 4 heels clicked. 4 hands snapped up in a rigid, perfect salute. "At ease, Vice Admiral," Vance said. Ethan dropped his glass. The pain was a living thing, a dull, throbbing bass line that vibrated through Ethan's femur and settled deep in his marrow. It was 0300 hours in the restricted recovery wing of the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, a place that officially didn't exist on the hospital map. The air smelled of ozone and industrial-grade disinfectant. Ethan shifted in the bed, the sheets rustling loudly in the quiet room. He hated being horizontal. He was a Tier 1 operator, a kinetic weapon designed for forward motion. Lying here, waiting for a shattered leg to knit itself back together after a botched extraction in Yemen, felt like a prison sentence. "You're awake," a voice said. It wasn't a question. Ethan turned his head. A woman stood by the monitors at the foot of his bed. She was checking the drip rates with a clinical, detached focus. In the dim blue light of the equipment, she looked young. Too young to be in this ward. Her scrubs were a nondescript navy blue, devoid of the usual name tapes or rank insignias that plastered everyone else in this building. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe, efficient knot. "Hard to sleep when the nurses make so much noise thinking," Ethan quipped, his voice raspy. He flashed the grin that had gotten him out of trouble in bars from San Diego to Bahrain. The woman didn't look up. Her fingers moved across a tablet with rapid precision. "I didn't make a sound, Commander Graves. Your heart rate spiked. You were dreaming." "I don't dream, sweetheart. I formulate tactical simulations while unconscious." She finally looked at him. Her eyes were dark, intelligent, and completely unimpressed. "If you say so, though usually, tactical simulations don't involve thrashing around enough to dislodge an IV line." She moved to his side, her hands cool and steady as she resecured the tape on his forearm. "So," Ethan pressed, bored and looking for a reaction. "You new here? I haven't seen you on the rotation. Usually I get Nurse Ratched or the guy who smells like old cigarettes." "I'm filling in," she said simply. "Turn your arm." "Ethan," he said. "My name's Ethan. You can drop the commander stuff. We're all friends in the hurt locker." "Turn your arm, Ethan," she repeated, the name sounding foreign and strictly utilitarian on her tongue. He complied, wincing slightly. "And you are?" "Maya." "Just Maya? No last name, no rank. Is this a share situation?" He chuckled at his own joke. Maya paused for a fraction of a second, her gaze flickering to the door where a pair of MPS stood guard outside. "Just Maya is fine for tonight. You need rest. Your cortisol levels are through the roof." "Occupational hazard. So, Maya, tell me, how does a nice girl end up in the spook ward? You failed the pediatrics exam? Scared of crying babies?" It was a standard probe. Ethan was used to reading people, assets, targets, liars. He wanted to see if she would crack, get defensive, or flirt back. Most civilian contractors or junior officers in the medical corps flushed when a SEAL teased them. It was the hierarchy of cool, and Ethan sat at the top. Maya finished adjusting the drip. She stepped back, clasping her hands behind her back, a posture that felt vaguely familiar to Ethan, though he was too groggy to place it. "I prefer patients who don't talk back," she said, her voice even. "And for the record, babies are easy. They cry when they need something. Men like you cry because you think you shouldn't need anything at all." Ethan blinked, blindsided. "Ouch! Bedside manner needs work. Sleep, Commander, or I'll up your sedation." She turned on her heel and walked out. She didn't check the clipboard at the end of the bed. She didn't look at the other monitors. She moved with a fluid, predatory grace that didn't belong in a hospital. Ethan watched her go, the smile fading from his lips. He felt a prick of irritation. He wasn't used to being dismissed. He was the hero here. She was just the help. "Feisty," he muttered to the empty room. "I like it." 2 days later, Ethan was mobile, albeit with a carbon fiber cane that cost more than his first car. He was pushing the limits of his physical therapy, driven by a desperate need to get back to his team. The boredom was lethal. He found himself wandering toward the secure briefing room on the 3rd floor. Technically, he was on medical leave, but his clearance was still active, and he wanted to know why the extraction in Yemen had gone sideways. He needed to know if it was bad intel or a leak. He swiped his keycard. The light turned red. "Access denied." "What the hell?" Ethan muttered, swiping again. Red. Commander Graves. He spun around, nearly losing his balance. Maya was standing 10 feet away, holding a tablet. She wasn't in scrubs today. She was wearing a grey tactical fleece and cargo pants, looking less like a nurse and more like an analyst on a field trip. "Maya." Ethan straightened up, leaning casually on his cane. "Stalking me?" "I'm flattered. You're trying to access a SCIF, sensitive compartmented information facility, with a suspended credential," she said, tapping her screen. "Medical hold suspends your TS/SCI access to active operational data. Standard protocol." Ethan scoffed, stepping closer. He towered over her, using his physical presence, a tactic that usually made support staff nervous. "Look, Maya, I appreciate the rulebook, I really do. But my team is still out there. I need to see the after-action report. Just look the other way for 5 minutes. I'll owe you a drink." Maya didn't flinch. She didn't even blink. She looked up at him with that same unnerving calmness. "Go back to your room, Ethan. You're not cleared for the Yemen file." Ethan froze. He hadn't mentioned Yemen. The air in the hallway seemed to drop 10 degrees. Ethan's voice lost its playful lilt. It became the voice of the operator. "How do you know about Yemen?" "I read your chart," she said, too quickly. "My medical chart says, traumatic injury, theater of operations. It doesn't say Yemen. That operation is classified top secret. Who are you?" She sighed, a sound of genuine exhaustion. "I'm the person trying to keep you from getting court-martialed for hacking a secure door. Go back to bed. Not until you tell me how a nurse knows about a black ops extraction." Ethan took a step forward, blocking her path. It was aggressive, a physical challenge. Maya's eyes narrowed. For a second, he saw a shift in her stance. Her weight dropped, her shoulders squared. It was a combat stance, subtle but undeniable. But just as quickly, she relaxed. "I hear things," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Nurses hear everything, Ethan. We change the bedpans of generals. We give sedatives to colonels who talk in their sleep. You'd be amazed what people say when they think no one important is listening." Ethan stared at her, searching for the lie. It made sense. It was plausible, but his gut was screaming that he was missing something. "You're a dangerous woman, Maya," he said, deciding to de-escalate. If she was just a gossip, she was harmless. If she was a spy, he needed to be careful. "You have no idea," she murmured. Just then, the elevator doors at the end of the hall pinged open. A chaotic group of men in suits and uniforms spilled out. In the center was Colonel Iron Mike Patterson, Ethan's direct superior and the commander of the SEAL teams on the eastern seaboard. "Graves!" Patterson barked, spotting him. "What are you doing out of bed?" "Sir," Ethan snapped to attention, wincing as his leg protested. "Just stretching the legs, trying to get back in the fight." Patterson marched over, looking stressed. He glanced at Maya, his eyes widening imperceptibly. He opened his mouth, but Maya cut him off with a micro-movement, a slight shake of her head, so small Ethan almost missed it. "Nurse," Patterson said, his voice strangely stiff. "Is he cleared for this?" "No, sir," Maya said, stepping back into the role of the subordinate. Commander Graves was just returning to his quarters. He was confused about the hallway restrictions. Ethan bristled. "I wasn't confused. I was—" "Returning to his quarters," Patterson interrupted loudly. "Do what she says, Graves. Now." Ethan looked between them. Patterson was a bulldog of a man who ate lieutenants for breakfast. Why was he deferring to a nurse in a fleece jacket? "Yes, sir," Ethan said slowly. He looked at Maya. "See you around, sweetheart." Maya didn't smile. She watched him walk away, her eyes tracking him like a sniper scope. As Ethan turned the corner, he glanced back. Patterson was leaning in, whispering something to Maya. Maya wasn't listening like a subordinate. She was nodding, her arms crossed, giving instructions. Sleeping together, Ethan thought, shaking his head as he hobbled toward his room. That explains it. She's the Colonel's mistress. That's why she has the ego. It was the only explanation that made sense to his worldview. It was clean, cynical, and completely wrong. 3 weeks later, the cane was gone, replaced by a slight limp that Ethan masked with a swagger. The Joint Chiefs were hosting the annual Special Operations Gala in D.C., a black tie event meant to secure funding and stroke the egos of the politicians who signed the checks. Ethan stood near the open bar, looking sharp in his dress whites. The gold trident on his chest caught the chandelier light. He was surrounded by his squad, Jax, Miller, and Soto. They were laughing, drinks in hand, reliving the glory days of the deployment, conveniently leaving out the parts where they almost died. "I'm telling you," Ethan said, swirling his whiskey. "The woman is icy, zero personality. But she's got Patterson wrapped around her finger. Probably why she walks around the ward like she owns the place." "Maybe she just doesn't like you, boss," Jax grinned. "It happens. Rare, but statistically possible." "Impossible," Ethan deadpanned. "I'm a delight." The crowd parted near the entrance. The murmur of conversation grew louder, then hushed. "Well, speak of the devil," Miller whispered, nudging Ethan. Ethan turned. Descending the grand staircase was Maya. She wasn't in scrubs, and she wasn't in tactical gear. She was wearing a floor-length gown of midnight blue silk that clung to her frame, revealing a swimmer's powerful shoulders and a grace that put the debutantes in the room to shame. Her hair was down, cascading in dark waves. She wore no jewelry, no necklace, no earrings, just the dress and a small clutch. She looked stunning, and she looked completely alone. Ethan felt a jolt of attraction mixed with that lingering irritation. She was here, at an event for the elite, likely as someone's +1. Probably Patterson's, though the Colonel was nowhere to be seen. "Watch this," Ethan said to his team, downing the rest of his drink. "Time to go pay my respects to the nursing staff." "Don't do it, man," Jax warned. "She's got 'stay away' written all over her. I'm just going to say hello. Maybe ask if she needs me to get her a drink since the colonel isn't here to hold her hand. Ethan weaved through the crowd of admirals, senators, and defense contractors. He approached Maya as she reached the bottom of the stairs. She was scanning the room, her expression focused, almost bored. "Maya," Ethan drawled, sliding into her line of sight. "Didn't know the hospital staff got invites to the big show. You sneak in the back?" She looked at him, her eyes landing on his trident, then moving up to his face. "Hello, Ethan. You're walking better. The PT is working." "It is. No thanks to the attitude in the ward." He stepped closer, invading her personal space, just enough to be dominant without being aggressive. "So, who are you here with? Patterson? Or did you find another high-ranking officer to organize your charts for?" "I'm here for work, Ethan. Enjoy your evening." She tried to step around him. Ethan sidestepped, blocking her. He was enjoying this. He wanted to crack that composure. He wanted to see her flustered. Work? At a gala? Unless someone chokes on a shrimp puff, I don't see much need for a nurse. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial, mocking whisper. "Seriously, Maya, what is it? You an ensign? A Lieutenant JG? You can tell me. I promise I won't make you salute." He laughed. A few officers nearby turned to look, sensing the confrontation. "Come on," Ethan pressed, his voice carrying over the lull in the music. "What's your rank, sweetheart? Don't be shy." Maya stopped. She looked at him, and for the first time, Ethan saw something terrifying in her eyes. It wasn't anger. It was pity. "Ethan," she said softly, "you really don't want the answer to that. Try me." Before she could speak, the double doors at the main entrance, the ones reserved for VIPs, swung open with a heavy thud. The room froze. Walking in were 4 men. General Vance, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Holloway, head of Army Special Operations, Admiral Thorne, chief of Naval Operations, and General Kincaid, the head of DARPA, the heavy hitters, the gods of war. Ethan straightened up, instinctively preparing to snap a salute as they approached. His team behind him stiffened. The generals were moving with purpose, cutting through the crowd like icebreakers. They were heading straight for Ethan. They must have heard about Yemen, Ethan thought, his chest swelling with pride. They're coming to commend me. He squared his shoulders, a smirk playing on his lips as he glanced at Maya. "Watch and learn, sweetheart. This is what respect looks like." The 4 generals stopped. They were 5 feet away. Ethan snapped his hand up in a perfect razor-sharp salute. "General Vance, sir. Lieutenant Commander Graves. SEAL team." General Vance walked right past him. He didn't even blink. He stepped around Ethan as if he were a piece of furniture, a potted plant, an obstruction in the hallway. Ethan stood there, hand frozen at his brow, confusion crashing over him like a rogue wave. He turned slowly. The 4 generals had stopped directly in front of Maya. The room was deathly silent. Every eye was fixed on the woman in the blue dress. Maya didn't flinch. She stood tall, her chin lifting slightly. Then, in perfect unison, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the CNO, and 2 4-star generals snapped their heels together. They raised their hands, and they saluted her. It wasn't a casual wave. It was a formal, rigid, hold-until-released salute. The kind reserved for the president or a superior officer of immense standing. Ethan's hand dropped to his side, limp, his breath hitched in his throat. Maya looked at the 4 most powerful men in the United States military. She didn't smile. She didn't blush. She slowly raised her right hand, returning the salute with a sharpness that eclipsed Ethan's own. "At ease, gentlemen," she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried to the back of the room. The generals dropped their hands. "Vice Admiral," General Vance said, his tone respectful, almost deferential. "We didn't expect you until the briefing tomorrow. The President sends his regards regarding the successful containment in Yemen." Vice Admiral. The words hit Ethan like a sledgehammer to the chest. The room spun. The nurse. The woman he'd called sweetheart. The woman he'd just mocked. Maya finally turned to look at Ethan. The pity was gone. In its place was the cold, hard steel of a commanding officer addressing a subordinate who had just made a career-ending mistake. "You were asking about my rank, Commander?" she asked, her voice cutting through the silence. Ethan couldn't speak. He couldn't breathe. "It's Vice Admiral Maya Sterling," she said, her eyes boring into his soul. "Deputy Director of Defense Clandestine Service, and the surgeon who saved your leg, you idiot." She turned back to the generals. "Shall we? I believe I need a drink." As she walked away, flanked by the 4 stars, Ethan stood alone in the center of the ballroom, his face burning with a heat that no amount of scotch could extinguish. The Pentagon has a specific smell at 0600 hours, floor wax, old coffee, and the impending doom of bureaucracy. For Lieutenant Commander Ethan Graves, the doom was personal. He walked down the E-ring corridor, his dress shoes clicking rhythmically on the polished tile. His team, Jax, Miller, and Soto, trailed a few paces behind him. Usually, they were a wall of banter and noise. Today they were silent. They had witnessed the massacre at the gala, and like good teammates, they were letting Ethan marinate in his own humiliation. "Say it," Ethan growled, not looking back. "I didn't say anything," Jax replied, his voice straining to hold back a laugh. "You're breathing loudly. It sounds like judgment." "It's just air, boss. But if I were judging, I'd say asking a 3-star admiral if she failed the pediatrics exam is a bold strategy. Let's see if it pays off." Ethan stopped at the door to the Sensitive Compartmented Information Facility, SCIF. He swiped his CAC card. This time the light turned green. "She played me," Ethan muttered, pushing the heavy door open. "She played the whole damn room." "She saved your leg," Miller whispered. "Technically, she owns you." They stepped inside. The room was dominated by a massive digital tactical table. The walls were lined with screens displaying satellite feeds of the Horn of Africa. And there she was. Vice Admiral Maya Sterling stood at the head of the table. She had traded the sapphire gown for a pristine service khaki uniform. 3 stars gleamed on her collar. The ribbon rack on her chest was dense, Defense Distinguished Service Medal, Silver Star, Purple Heart. It was a resume of violence and survival that eclipsed everyone else in the room. Sitting around the table were General Vance and Colonel Patterson. Patterson looked pale. He avoided making eye contact with Ethan. "Commander," Maya said. Her voice was stripped of the warmth, fake or otherwise, she had used in the hospital. It was cool, resonant, and commanded absolute silence. "Take a seat. We're on a clock." Ethan moved to the chair opposite her. He snapped a salute, his movement stiff. "Ma'am." She didn't return it this time. She didn't even look at him. She tapped the table, and the hologram flared to life, showing a jagged coastline. "We have a situation developing in the Gulf of Aden," Maya began, addressing the room. "As you know, the extraction in Yemen 3 weeks ago was compromised. We lost intel, and we nearly lost Commander Graves's team." She glanced at Ethan then, her eyes unreadable. "We assumed it was a leak on the ground," she continued. "We were wrong. The leak came from the broker, a man named Silas Vane, ex-CIA, currently selling agency secrets to the highest bidder." She swiped the screen, bringing up a grainy surveillance photo of a man in a white linen suit boarding a yacht. "Vane is currently in international waters, hosting an auction. The item for sale is the NOC list, non-official cover, for our entire operative network in East Africa. If that list sells, 34 agents die within the hour. General Vance leaned forward. What's the window, Admiral? The auction closes at 2300 hours tonight. We can't hit the yacht with a missile. Vane has a dead man switch that uploads the list to the public web if his heart rate stops. We need a physical breach. We need to secure the drive and neutralize Vane. Maya looked directly at Ethan. This is a surgical entry, low signature, high kinetic potential. I need a team that can move through a civilian environment without triggering a panic, then switch to lethal force in a microsecond. We're ready, Patterson piped up, finding his voice. Graves's team is the best water entry unit we have. I know, Maya said. I put them back together myself. The silence stretched. Ethan felt the weight of her words. She wasn't just talking about the team roster. She was talking about his femur. Commander Graves, Maya said, are you fit for duty? It was a loaded question. It asked about his leg, yes, but it also asked about his ego. Could he take orders from the woman he'd called sweetheart? Could he trust the nurse with his life? Ethan stood up. He looked at the map, then at Maya. The shame of the gala evaporated, replaced by the cold focus of the job. Green across the board, Admiral. Just point us at the boat. Maya held his gaze for a second longer than necessary. Good. Briefing materials are on your pads. Wheels up in 30 minutes. You're under my direct command for this one, Graves. Don't make me regret saving that leg. The C-17 Globemaster hummed with a low, vibrating drone as it cruised at 30,000 feet. The cargo hold was dimly lit by red tactical lights. Ethan sat on a crate, cleaning his HK-416 assault rifle. The mechanical rhythm of disassembly and reassembly usually calmed him. But today, his mind was racing. Maya was sitting in the mobile command module, a soundproofed container strapped to the deck of the plane. She had been in there for 4 hours, on encrypted comms with God knows who. The door to the module opened, and Maya stepped out. She was wearing a flight suit now, devoid of rank, her hair pulled back in that same severe knot she'd worn in the hospital. She walked over to where the SEALs were geared up. The team instinctively straightened, but she waved them down. She grabbed a water bottle and leaned against the cargo netting, looking more like an operator than an admiral. Vane's yacht is the Gilded Cage, she said, her voice fighting the drone of the engines. It's a fortress, private security mercenaries, mostly ex-Spetsnaz. They're heavy, disciplined, and they don't care about collateral damage. We've handled Russians before, Jack said, sharpening a combat knife. Not like these, Maya countered. These are Vimpel Group washouts. They're sadists, and Vane is paranoid. He has biometric sensors on the server room. If anyone other than him or his chief of security enters, the data dumps to the web. Ethan looked up, snapping the upper receiver of his rifle back into place. So we need Vane alive to open the door, or we need his hand. We need him alive, Maya said sharply. If he dies before we secure the drive, the dead man's switch triggers anyway. It's a dual authentication failsafe. Biology and biometrics. Ethan frowned. That complicates the ROE, rules of engagement. If he rabbits, we can't take the shot. Which is why you aren't going in the front door, Maya said. She looked at Ethan. You and I are going in as buyers. The team went silent. Ethan blinked. Excuse me? Vane is expecting a representative from a cartel in Sinaloa. We intercepted their courier in Djibouti 2 hours ago. We have their codes and their invite. Maya gestured between herself and Ethan. I'm the buyer. You're my muscle. No offense, Admiral, Ethan said, standing up. But I don't do undercover. I kick doors. And you're a 3-star admiral. You can't be on the ground. It's a violation of protocol, a mile long." "I wrote the protocol, Ethan," she said, her eyes flashing. "And I speak fluent Spanish and Russian. You speak grunt and bad pickup line. I need someone who can look dangerous in a suit while I handle the negotiation. Can you do that, or do I need to find a Marine?" The insult landed perfectly. The team snickered. "I can look dangerous," Ethan said, crossing his arms. "But if this goes south, I can't protect you and secure the target at the same time." "I don't need you to protect me," Maya said quietly. She stepped closer, invading his space again. But this time the dynamic was different. It wasn't a challenge, it was a statement of fact. "I need you to be the distraction. When the deal goes bad, and it will, I need you to draw the fire so I can get to the server room." "You're going to breach the server room?" "I'm the only one who knows the encryption sequence to override the upload if the biometrics fail. It's a proprietary DARPA code. I wrote that too." Ethan stared at her. "Is there anything you don't do?" "I don't make mistakes," she said. "Not anymore." She turned to the rest of the team. "Jax, Miller, Soto, you're in the water. Rebreathers. You plant charges on the rudder and wait for my signal. When the chaos starts, you breach from the stern and cut off their escape." "Yes, ma'am," the team chorused. Maya looked back at Ethan. "Suit up, Commander. We drop in 20 minutes. It's going to be a long night." As she walked away, Ethan felt a strange sensation in his chest. It wasn't just respect. It was fear. Not for himself, but for the realization that he had vastly underestimated the woman who had held his life in her hands for weeks. She wasn't just a doctor. She was a weapon. The Halo jump was silent. They deployed the chutes low, skimming the dark water of the Gulf of Aden, before cutting away and swimming to the extraction boat, waiting 3 miles out. From there, it was a high-speed transfer to a rigid hull inflatable. Then, a silent approach to the massive illuminated superyacht anchored in the deep dark. Ethan adjusted the collar of his tuxedo. It was Kevlar-lined, custom-fitted, and uncomfortable. He had a suppressed P226 strapped to the small of his back and a comms piece deep in his ear. Next to him, Maya looked devastating. She wore a sleek, silver evening gown that concealed a ceramic knife in the thigh slit and a compact pistol in a holster integrated into the dress's structure. She applied a coat of red lipstick in the reflection of the boat's console. "Showtime," she whispered. They boarded the gilded cage via the guest tender, playing the part of the late arrivals perfectly. The deck was swarming with high-end criminals, arms dealers, traffickers, corrupt officials. The air smelled of expensive cigars and diesel. "Stay close," Maya murmured, looping her arm through Ethan's. Her grip was firm, her pulse steady. "Don't speak unless addressed. You're the bodyguard. Look bored and lethal." "I was born bored and lethal," Ethan muttered. "Eyes up. 3 o'clock. Vane." Silas Vane was holding court near the bar. He was a small man with nervous energy and eyes that darted around the room like trapped birds. He was flanked by 3 hulking men with scars that mapped out the conflicts of Eastern Europe. Maya steered them toward Vane. "Mr. Vane, apologies for the delay. The currents were uncooperative." Vane turned. He looked Maya up and down, his gaze lingering. "The Sinaloa representative. You're younger than I expected, and far more beautiful." "And you're louder than I expected, considering who is listening," Maya replied in flawless Russian. Vane's eyes widened. He switched to Russian, laughing. "A sharp tongue. I like that." "And this?" He gestured to Ethan. "My insurance," Maya said. "He doesn't speak. He just breaks things." Ethan kept his face impassive, scanning the perimeter. He counted 12 hostiles on the upper deck alone, 2 snipers on the radar tower. It was a kill box. "Shall we discuss business?" Maya asked. "In the lounge," Vane said. "Private." They followed Vane into the main salon. The glass doors slid shut, muting the party noise. Inside, it was just Vane, 2 guards, Maya, and Ethan. "The money?" Vane asked. "Transferred to the escrow account," Maya said. "Release the key." Vane pulled a tablet from his jacket. "Not so fast. My security team ran a scan on your tender. It's clean. But my face rec software, it's having trouble with you." The air in the room shifted. Ethan tensed, his hand inching toward his back. "I have a very common face," Maya said calmly. "No," Vane whispered, stepping back. "You don't. You have the face of a ghost. I've seen you before. In Kiev. No, Damascus." He tapped the screen. "Enhance resolution." "Ethan," Maya said, her voice dropping the undercover persona entirely. "Now." Ethan moved. He didn't draw the gun. He grabbed a heavy crystal decanter from the side table and hurled it at the nearest guard. It shattered against the man's face, sending him reeling. Simultaneously, Maya dropped. She swept Vane's legs, sending him crashing to the floor. As he fell, she snatched the tablet from his hand. "Contact!" Ethan roared, drawing his weapon. Pop, pop. 2 rounds into the chest of the second guard before the man could raise his rifle. "Jax! Breach! Breach!" Maya screamed into her comms. The yacht shuddered as the shaped charges on the rudder detonated. The lights flickered and died, plunging the room into emergency red. "I can't override it!" Maya yelled, sliding across the floor to cover behind a sofa. "He changed the biometric sequence." Vane was scrambling on the floor, blood running from his nose. "You're too late. It's uploading. 1 minute." "Secure him," Maya ordered, firing blindly over the couch to suppress the guards rushing the glass doors. Ethan vaulted the coffee table, tackling Vane. He pinned the man to the ground, jamming the barrel of his gun under Vane's chin. "Stop the upload." "I can't," Vane spat, grinning through bloody teeth. "It's not me anymore. It's the heartbeat sensor. If I die, it goes. If I live, it goes. You lose, Admiral." He knew. Ethan looked back at Maya. She was tapping furiously on the tablet, bullets chewing up the upholstery around her. "Maya," Ethan yelled. "We have to go. We can't stop it." "I can," she said, her voice eerily calm amidst the chaos. She looked at Ethan, and for the first time he saw fear. Not for herself. "I have to short the server physically, from the inside." "That room is halon protected," Ethan screamed. "It sucks the oxygen out in 10 seconds to prevent fire. You'll suffocate." "Then you better get the door open fast," she said. She stood up, firing 2 precise shots that dropped a guard charging through the shattered door. "Cover me!" She sprinted toward the server room at the back of the lounge. "Maya, don't!" Ethan roared, dragging Vane with him as a human shield. She didn't listen. She hit the keypad, bypassed the lock, and threw herself inside the server vault. The heavy steel door slammed shut behind her. A second later, the emergency alarm blared. Halon discharge imminent. Ethan was alone in the firefight, holding a laughing traitor, while the woman who outranked him locked herself in a suffocating steel coffin to save 34 strangers. "Damn it!" Ethan shoved Vane into the hands of Jax, who had just burst through the window, wet and angry. "Hold him!" Ethan turned and ran toward the steel door. He didn't have the code. He didn't have a key. All he had was a breaching charge and a desperate need to not let her die. "Hang on, sweetheart," he gritted out, slapping the C4 on the hinges. "I'm coming." The explosion was deafening in the confined space of the yacht's lounge. The shaped charge didn't just open the steel door, it tore it from the frame, sending it clattering inward into the server room. A thick, white fog rolled out instantly. Halon gas. It was heavy, cold, and displaced oxygen with ruthless efficiency. "Cover me!" Ethan screamed, his voice raw. He dropped his rifle, took a massive breath of the smoky, acrid air outside the room, and plunged into the white void. Visibility was zero. The air was freezing. Ethan's lungs burned immediately, his body screaming for oxygen that wasn't there. He swept his arms blindly, his boots crunching on glass and metal. "Where are you?" He hit the floor, crawling. The server racks were humming, the LEDs blinking red in the fog. He found the main console. It was sparked out, smoke rising from the motherboard. She had done it. She had shorted the system manually. Then his hand hit something soft. Maya was crumpled against the far wall, her silver dress stark against the black anti-static floor. Her eyes were closed, her face pale. She wasn't breathing. Ethan grabbed her harness, hauling her dead weight up. His vision was tunneling. Black spots danced in his eyes. He needed to breathe. But if he inhaled now, the halon would knock him out in seconds. He dragged her toward the shattered doorway. It felt like moving through quicksand. His chest was a tightening vice. 3 feet. 2 feet. He burst out of the server room, collapsing onto the lounge floor. He gasped, sucking in the smoke-filled air of the cabin, which tasted like ambrosia compared to the void behind him. "Medic!" Ethan roared, flipping Maya onto her back. "Jax, get the kit!" Maya was limp. Her lips were blue. Ethan didn't wait for the kit. He tilted her head back, pinched her nose, and sealed his mouth over hers. He breathed for her, forcing air into her lungs. "Come on, Admiral," he gritted out between breaths. "Don't you die on me. That's a direct order." Around them, the firefight had devolved into close-quarters brutality. Miller and Soto were holding the hallway, their suppressed weapons coughing rhythmically as they dropped mercenaries trying to breach the lounge. "Boss, we're taking heavy fire," Miller yelled. "We need to move." "Not until she breathes," Ethan shouted, pressing down on her chest. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breath. Suddenly, Maya gasped. It was a ragged, desperate sound. Her eyes flew open, wide and terrified, before rolling back slightly. She coughed, her body convulsing as she tried to expel the chemical remnants from her system. "I got you," Ethan whispered, pulling her up into a sitting position, shielding her body with his own, as a stray bullet shattered a vase nearby. "I got you, Maya." She grabbed his lapel, her grip surprisingly strong. "The upload?" she rasped. "Fried," Ethan said. "You killed it. Now let's get the hell out of here before Vane's friends decide to sink the boat." He scooped her up in his arms. She was tall, athletic, but in this moment, she felt fragile. "Jax, Miller, pop smoke. We're leaving." The team moved as a phalanx, a wedge of violence cutting through the chaos. They blasted their way to the stern, dragged Vane with them, and dove into the dark water, just as the yacht's fuel stores, rigged by Soto, erupted, turning the gilded cage into a floating inferno. Walter Reed Medical Center, 1 week later. The lighting in the VIP recovery suite was softer than the trauma ward. There were flowers on the table, orchids from the president, roses from the Secretary of Defense, and a cactus from the CIA director. Ethan sat in the uncomfortable guest chair, spinning his navy cover in his hands. He was in his dress blues again, looking impeccable, though his left arm was in a sling from a ricochet he'd taken during the extraction. The bed hummed as Maya adjusted it to a sitting position. She looked tired, her skin still pale, but the fire was back in her eyes. She was reading a briefing on a tablet. "You know," Ethan said, breaking the silence, "most people take a few days off after dying." Maya didn't look up. "Silas Vane is singing like a canary. He's given us 3 other broker networks. I need to authorize the strike teams." You have deputies for that, Admiral. She finally lowered the tablet. She looked at him, really looked at him. It's hard to delegate when you're used to doing everything yourself. Yeah, I noticed, Ethan said. Locking yourself in a gas chamber. That's not leading from the front, Maya. That's a suicide mission. It was a calculated risk, and it worked. Because I came back for you. The air in the room shifted. It wasn't the tension of rank or the playfulness of flirting. It was the heavy, unspoken weight of shared trauma. Yes, she said softly. Because you came back. She placed the tablet on the bedside table. Why were you so rude to me in the ward, Ethan? Before you knew. Ethan looked down at his hat. He traced the brim with his thumb. Because you were the only thing in that hospital I couldn't figure out. Everyone else bowed and scraped because I was a SEAL. You looked at me like I was just a guy with a broken leg. It terrified me. So you attacked, she surmised. It's what I do. I attack the threat. He looked up, meeting her gaze. And then I found out the threat outranked me by 5 pay grades. A small smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. You called me sweetheart while I was changing your IV. I know. I wake up in a cold sweat thinking about the court-martial potential. I considered it, she admitted. But then I read your file. You've lost a lot of people, Ethan. You use arrogance as armor. If you don't care about anyone, you can't be hurt when they don't make it back. Ethan stayed silent. She had dissected him with the same precision she used on national security threats. I didn't want you to know who I was, she continued, her voice dropping. In this job, as a woman, as an admiral, I'm always the asset or the boss. When I volunteer in the ward, just for a few hours a week, I get to be just a nurse. I get to be human. You took that away from me at the gala. I'm sorry, Ethan said. And for the first time in a long time, he meant it completely. I was an arse. You deserved better. Maya watched him for a long moment. Then she reached out and pressed the call button on her bed rail. Nurse, she said into the intercom. Can you bring in 2 coffees? And... She glanced at Ethan. A scotch. Neat. She released the button. I accept your apology, Commander, but you still owe me that drink 6 months later. The wind on the tarmac at Andrews Air Force Base was biting, cutting through thermal layers like a serrated knife. A C-17 Globemaster III sat idling, its massive engines whining with a pitch that vibrated in the chest. The ramp was down, revealing the red-lit cavern of the cargo hold where pallets of gear and a dozen silent operators waited. Ethan stood at the base of the ramp, adjusting the straps of his kit bag. He was back in his element, multicam, Kevlar, and the heavy weight of a suppressed carbine. His arm had healed perfectly, a testament to a certain surgeon's skill, though he still felt a phantom ache whenever the barometric pressure dropped. Wheels up in 5, boss, Jax shouted over the turbine roar, kicking a tire on the transport vehicle. Unless you're waiting for a handwritten invitation from the president. Just soaking in the DC weather, Jax. Might miss it where we're going. You mean the jungle? I won't miss the freeze, but the humidity is going to kill my hair. Ethan smirked, checking his watch. He was waiting. Not that he'd admit it. He'd sent a text 3 hours ago. Heading out. Don't worry, I packed extra socks. No reply. He turned to head up the ramp when the security perimeter at the edge of the flight line broke. 2 black Suburbans rolled onto the tarmac, their strobes flashing silently in the grey morning light. They moved with the aggressive authority of government motorcades. As they pulled up near the wingtip, a frantic Air Force crew chief ran out to intercept, waving his wands, only to freeze when he saw the flags snapping on the lead car's fender. 3 stars on a field of blue. Holy shot, Miller muttered from the top of the ramp. "Is that who I think it is?" The rear door of the lead SUV opened. A Secret Service agent stepped out, scanning the line, before opening the passenger door. Vice Admiral Maya Sterling stepped out onto the concrete. She wasn't in the gala gown, and she wasn't in scrubs. She was in full-service dress blue, her heavy bridge coat buttoned to the chin, gold sleeve stripes gleaming against the dark wool. She wore her cover pulled low. She looked every inch the terrifying architect of American naval power. She said something to a detail who stayed by the car and walked alone towards the plane. The wind whipped at her coat, but she moved with that same fluid, devastating grace Ethan remembered from the hospital ward. Ethan dropped his bag. He walked out to meet her, stopping 10 feet away to salute. "Mom!" he shouted over the engines. Maya stopped. She didn't return the salute immediately. She looked him over, her eyes scanning his gear, his stance, his face. She was checking the asset. "At ease, Commander," she said, her voice surprisingly clear in the cacophony. Ethan dropped his hand. "You didn't have to come, Admiral. I know your schedule. You're supposed to be briefing the Senate right now." "The Senate can wait. They just want to argue about budget caps. I have more pressing investments to protect." She took a step closer, closing the distance until the professional gap felt dangerously intimate. "I signed the deployment order, Ethan. I know exactly where you're going, and I know the success rate of teams in that sector. It's a standard interdiction, Mom. We'll be back before you miss us." "Don't lie to an intelligence officer," she chastised gently, though her eyes lacked their usual steel. They looked tired. "It's a ghost hunt, and I'm sending you to catch the ghost." "We're good at hunting." "I know." She looked past him at the gaping maw of the plane, then back to his face. "I received your text. You packed extra socks?" Ethan laughed, a genuine sound that cracked his pre-deployment armor. "Protocol, right? Keep the feet dry." Ethan. The use of his first name snapped him to attention more effectively than a shout. "I need you to listen to me," she said, her voice dropping, forcing him to lean in slightly. "The intel on this one is thin. If it feels wrong, if the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, you pull the plug. Do you hear me? I don't care about the mission parameters. I want my team back." Ethan looked at her. He saw the surgeon who had bullied him into recovery, the woman who had locked herself in a gas chamber, the leader who had saluted him when he was broken. "You want your team back?" he challenged softly. "Or just the team leader?" Maya didn't blink. A slow, knowing smile touched her lips. "Classified, Commander." She reached out. For a second, he thought she might shake his hand. Instead, she reached up and adjusted the collar of his tactical vest, her gloved fingers lingering near his neck. It was a gesture of possession, of care, disguised as a uniform correction. "Come back, Ethan. That's a lawful order." "Yes, Ma'am. I'm not in the habit of disobeying 3-star admirals anymore." "Good." She stepped back, the mask of command sliding back into place. "Godspeed, Graves." Ethan took a breath. He snapped his heels together, the sound lost in the engine whine. He raised his right hand in a salute, slow, crisp, and filled with a depth of respect that had nothing to do with rank and everything to do with the woman standing in the cold. "Admiral," he said. Maya returned it, her hand slicing the air perfectly. She held it until he turned. Ethan grabbed his bag and jogged up the ramp. He didn't look back until he was strapped into the jump seat next to Jack's. As the hydraulics hissed and the heavy door began to leverage upward, sealing them in, he caught one last glimpse through the narrowing gap. She was still standing there, a lone, dark figure against the grey sky, watching the plane until she disappeared from view. The interior of the C-17 was dim and smelled of hydraulic fluid and nervous sweat. Was that Sterling? Jax asked, his eyes wide. The Vice Admiral? She came to the flight line, for us? Ethan clicked his harness shut, checking the release mechanism. He looked at the spot on his vest where she had touched him. Yeah, Ethan said quietly. Dude. Miller leaned in from across the aisle. She outranks God. She doesn't do tarmac goodbyes. What the hell is going on with you two? Ethan looked out the small porthole as the plane lurched forward, beginning its taxi to the runway. He thought about the gala. He thought about the server room. He thought about the way she looked at him when no one else was watching. He smiled, leaning his head back against the cargo netting. It's classified, Ethan said, closing his eyes. But let's just say, I finally learned my place. Ethan learned the hard way that authority isn't about the volume of your voice or the size of your ego. It's about the quiet competence to get the job done when the world is burning. He judged Maya by her scrubs, missing the warrior beneath the fabric. In a world obsessed with appearances, the most dangerous people are often the ones who don't feel the need to announce themselves. If you enjoyed this story of hidden ranks and humbled heroes, please like, share, and subscribe for more grounded military dramas.